Be back.
Hi, thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit about your article here about feminists and not talking about Muslim rape epidemic that's sweeping Europe.
Well, this is a point we've pushed over and over again, David, and I've got another article coming out soon, which is Top Feminist Calls for Collectivist Revolution. And we emphasize this over and over again, which is the point that feminists don't care about genuine women's rights issues. Third wave feminism is all about authoritarianism and social engineering. So now this top feminist with an organization called 1 Billion Rising, backed by the United Nations, and that's important to emphasize, these feminists aren't just whining on Twitter or Tumblr. They're backed by millions and millions of dollars in foundation and corporate funding. So she's the head of an organization that seeks to end rape and sexual violence against women. She doesn't talk about the fact that rape and sexual violence against women is endemic within the Islamic community, which we'll get onto. But she basically got up in front of a crowd in New York a couple of weeks ago and gave a speech in which she talked about how feminism was about creating a collectivist revolution and that she was proud to say, quote, American individualism is dead and global solidarity is alive and on the rise. So it was basically kind of a creepy communist cult initiation meeting for feminists who, again, are being backed by millions and millions of dollars in corporate funding. And again, it goes back to feminism being completely opposed to classical liberalism, which was the moral worth of the individual. She's coming out and brazenly stating that feminism is determined to destroy individualism, destroy free market capitalism, and replace it with a collectivist revolution. So again, feminism is not about genuine women's rights issues. It's about social engineering and advancing this authoritarian agenda.
Yeah, and there seems to be a very selective outrage over certain things. As you point out, the feminists are not looking at what is happening to women in fundamental Islamic countries, just as we see that there's no concern about the regular Saudi beheadings. As we pointed out the other day, at the rate that they've been beheading people, they're going to get to the number of Christians that were beheaded this last week, if that was in fact an authentic video, 20 some odd Christians beheaded. That would happen in less than 90 days in Saudi Arabia, yet we're supposed to go to war, put boots on the ground, wipe out ISIS, but we're allied with people who do that on a regular basis. And that's what we're seeing here with this kind of hypocrisy with the feminists.
That's right. And, Saudi Arabia passed a law which characterized female drivers as terrorists. You didn't hear any feminist outrage about it. Mm-hmm. They were too busy complaining about Matt Taylor, the comet scientist, quote, sexist shirt. That's what they harp on about. They harped on about the college rape scandal for years, claiming that 1 in 5 female students in the United States are victims of sexual assault. We got the Justice Department numbers in 2014, December, which showed that actually 0.03 in 5 are victims of sexual assault on U.S. college campuses.
Wow.
And female students are 25% less likely to be raped than non-students. And yet they harped on about that for years. It was a contrived myth. It blew up in their faces with the University of Virginia rape scandal, which was completely debunked. And then we can get onto what's actually happening with real rape scandals after the break in Sweden, Denmark, Norway, and other European countries.
Yeah, they throw these statistics out there, and just like we see happening with the vaccine thing, that the CDC continues to tell everybody, hey, these vaccines are 99% effective, and yet we saw in the Disneyland outbreak that 14% of the people had been vaccinated. The year before, they had an outbreak in California. 18% of the people had been vaccinated. Back in 1987, according to the, and if you think, well, maybe that's just a small population, if you go back to 1987, look at the CDC's own numbers, 52% of the people who came down with measles had been vaccinated. Yet they still put this story out there that it's 99% effective. They continue to persist in these kind of statistics to support their view. That's why you always need to go back and check to see, where did these numbers come from?
Yeah, because, they can contrive a whole narrative based on completely fraudulent numbers, and only later they come out and prove the opposite case. But again, there's a huge article up on InfoWars, Feminist Mute on Muslim Rape Epidemic Sweeping Europe. This is a heavily documented article. It's full of videos and hyperlinks to government documents, police reports about how this epidemic of Muslim abuse is sweeping the continent, so we'll get onto it.
Yes, that's an article up on Infowars.com. We have Paul Joseph Watson from the UK joining us, and he's going to be with us right after the break. Stay with us. It simply isn't politically correct to talk about what's going on in European countries. As you point out in your article here, Paul, you say that in Denmark, for example, crime rates broken down by nationality show individuals from Muslim countries make up 8 of the top 9 places on the list. In 2012, sexual assaults were almost 10 times more common amongst those who were immigrants than with those of Danish citizenship. Yet we can't talk about that because it's not politically correct. We've been beaten down into submission with multiculturalism.
Well, that's right. And I mean, this is the heart of feminism, is rampant hypocrisy, because they don't talk about this. Like the woman I was just talking about before the break, you know, has an organization devoted to ending sexual violence and rape against women, yet refuses to address this problem. You know, we had a case in Rotherham in England where from 1997 onwards, for nearly 15 years, over 1,000 young girls were sexually abused, beaten and trafficked by primarily Pakistani Muslim men. And the Labour government in Rotherham covered up and ignored that scandal, ignored the reports that were pouring in, because they feared being characterized as politically incorrect and racist. So this is where political correctness again poses a direct threat to the just functioning of a free society. And as you mentioned, you can go through the other countries. And again, to underscore the point, you know, most sober-minded Muslims would agree that this is a problem, this is a crisis that needs to be addressed, just as most Catholics would agree that the Vatican pedophile scandal needed to be addressed. You know, this isn't about demonizing Muslims. It's about calling out this authoritarian political correctness that prevents these reports from being taken seriously by governments in these European countries, by the media, because they're more concerned with protecting multicultural sensitivities, whereby, to the point, you know, you've got Lars Hedegaard in Denmark, who put out the report with the stats that you just mentioned. He was actually brought up under hate speech laws for simply talking about the issue. So they're treating people who bring attention to it, in some cases, worse than the actual rapists.
And we need to understand, and we need to understand too, that multiculturalism is really the tool to bring about global governance. They want to destroy cultures and sovereign nations, and the way they do it is with open immigration, as they're doing here in the United States. They have a different way of doing it slightly in Europe. Nevertheless, it is all about breaking down the cultures, the continuity of government, if you will. I don't like to use that phrase because that's something used by our government to justify a lot of very bad things. But the continuity of culture of a people, to break that down, to mix the groups together and to set them apart against each other. That's all part of this multicultural. So instead of just bringing this in and saying we want to uplift these cultures, they're actually using it to destroy indigenous cultures, aren't they?
Yeah, and they're using it as a tool of political repression. They're playing one culture off against each other. You know, even world leaders like Cameron and Merkel have admitted that multiculturalism has failed. It's a failed experiment. So, for example, since 1975 in Sweden, when they opened their doors to multiculturalism, the rape skyrocketed since that time by 1,472%. So now 77% of rapes committed in Sweden are carried out by foreign immigrants, mainly Muslims, because under Islam they see women as second-class citizens. But the people in Sweden who are drawing attention to this are being characterized as racist thought criminals merely for trying to highlight the fact that this is a major problem.
Yeah, they have a real problem. That's why we see the rise of UKIP and a lot of these other parties that want independence from the European Union. They understand how this is being sold to them, how they're taking down their countries, and yet the standard response is that they're xenophobic, that they're racist. We're out of time for today. Thank you for joining us, Paul Joseph Watson, and join us tonight for the InfoWars Nightly News at 7 Central, 8 p.m. Eastern.